gathering your resources. Gathering your resources. Now, you understand you have a venue, you have a date, you've selected your team, you've sent out save the date. Now we begin to add some meat to the bone. Leading up to this training, all you were doing is pretty much outlining, looking at what should be included, who should be on your team, what expertise do they bring, what skill set. We also talked about making sure that you have worker bees and making sure that people are there to actually work and not just be a distraction to you. That is absolutely key and important for you to understand. And so we want to talk about number one, and we're going to talk about four critical questions that you need to ask yourself when it comes to gathering the resources that you need. First of all, let's start with a blank sheet of paper, and you need to write out, first question, what do you need to make your event, your webcast, your seminar? If you're doing a presentation, what do you need? What are the essential ingredients that you need for it to be successful? You want to write that out. And that's the power of having a team. Remember, I talked about creating in training number 2, I talked about creating a circle of critics or a circle of influencers. These are people that can give you honest feedback. And now what you want to begin to do is ask yourself, what actually do you need? What do you need? For example, how much seating do you need? Maybe you need to look at, the projector. What type of projector? Sound system, audio visuals. Should you use a PowerPoint or should you just use talking points? You see, understand that, for example, let's talk a little bit about your presentation. In some cases, PowerPoint can actually be a distraction. Now, for those of you who prefer to use PowerPoint, what I would suggest is that you use primarily an image that would convey a picture, as opposed to having a lot of text, because that's a lot of work for them to listen and also having to read. The only time you really should have words on your PowerPoint is when you're making a point or a summary. Then it's okay to do that. Sometimes it's better just to have an image up there and have talking points to talk through so that people are listening to you and also taking notes. And you want to encourage people to, in fact, take notes. That is extremely important for you to do that. The second question you want to ask yourself, who do you need? In other words, who do you need to do what? You see, I believe the answer to every question, as Trevor Otts would say, does not always have to be you. The answer to every question does not always have to be you. Sometimes the best person to do a certain thing is not you. And so you want to make sure that you take yourself out of the equation. Remember, I said that the event, the webcast, the training is not about you, the presenter, but it is about the audience and making sure that your message is targeted to the audience. Now let's talk about targeting a little bit. Thank you, those of you that are joining us on Periscope. Glad to have you. And thank you for your comments. When you target your message, it is extremely important that you utilize 3 key ingredients to any type of message, whether it be a conversation or a presentation. And I believe that every presentation really should be a conversation. You should deliver it in a conversation type of mode. And here are the 3 key ingredients. Number 1, you are speaking to one person. You're not speaking to everyone. You're speaking to, remember we talked about targeting. You're speaking to that ideal person who represents your avatar, your preferred customer. And by speaking to one, you end up speaking to many. Think about that for a second. By speaking to one, you end up speaking to many because your message is targeted towards your preferred customer. And that is extremely important to understand when it comes to your message. The second, once we understand that you're speaking to one person, even in a multitude of 500 to even 5,000 or 50,000, you're speaking to one individual. And that is key to understand. The second point, when it comes to your message, you also want to make sure that your message is concise. In other words, it doesn't take a whole lot to make a point. You want to make sure that it's concise and also that your message is relevant to that individual, to your preferred audience. I see a lot of times people, they just spend a lot of time talking and they never get to the point. The third leads up to this. Never make a point without telling a story, and never tell a story without making a point. Les Brown said that. Never make a point without telling a story, and never tell a story without making a point. And so you're speaking to one. You want to make sure that your message is concise and relevant, and you want to share it in a form of a story that resonates with your particular audience, your preferred customer. And so you want to make sure, again, who do you need? Maybe that's not you. Maybe someone else is better at moderating. A lot of times what I would do when I host my events, I will have a mistress or a master of ceremony, someone who's energetic, someone who's high energy, someone that can keep things on track. I will also utilize a floor person. Now, a floor person or a floor manager is someone at your event that will make sure people are on deck. There's nothing worse than hosting an event and you're looking for people. You want to have people in place that they are ready. If I have, for example, 2 or 3 speakers lined up, and sometimes they may go back to back. Let's say I have a speaker, he or she might speak for 15 or 20 minutes. Well, I'm going to have at least 2 speakers on deck ready to go, because it's very important that they are ready to go so that your program has a flow to it. You want to make sure that your program has a flow to it. And that is extremely important, that the program is flowing. And you don't want to have a lot of dead space. There's nothing worse. And I've gone to programs, I've gone to workshops, I've gone to conferences where the announcer or the moderator or the MC would get on and say, we're waiting on so-and-so, and they get up there and they make 3 or 4 announcements saying, Tom, please come to the deck, you're going on. You know, it's embarrassing. You want to have your program run as a smooth oiled machine. Again, that goes back to number 2. Who do you need in place to do that? Who's going to be your master of ceremony? Who's going to moderate? Who, if you have a panel, who's going to facilitate that? You want to have those people in place. Who's in charge of your registration if you're having a registration? Who's working the back room? Who's connecting with others? One of the things that I would do, I'll have someone walk around and just engage the audience. Okay, I have a person whose sole job is maybe to throw out 2 or 3 questions. Understand, a lot of times people, they don't know you, they might be a little afraid to ask the question. So I will have 2 or 3 people in the audience that will what I call conversation starters. And they will ask a question. Okay. You want to make sure that you have key people in your audience that will help stimulate conversation so that when you are on the platform, for those of you that are platform speakers, even if you're doing this online, you can have someone pose questions that's engaging the audience. Now, how do you do this? It's about building again your team and making sure that the people on your team know what it is they are supposed to be doing. The next thing you want to look at, how will you do it? We talked about what you need, who do you need in place, and you also want to make sure that how will you do it? Okay, what is going to be your way of communicating? Online, offline? Are you going to do announcements? For example, I have a good friend who, when she holds her events, she actually has her events or the announcement posted on sort of like a running billboard so it doesn't break again the flow. And that way, you always have someone that lost their keys, misplaced their purse, and she would just put it up on the monitor. And before the event, she would let them know, hey, we're going to also have a message. Another thing, you can have someone, and here's something that I really like, that you can have someone in charge of, and that is sending out text messages, monitoring your social media during the live event, having someone run your Facebook Live, your Twitter feed, even your Periscope. You want to have all of these things in place so that your event will be successful. Now, all of this again goes into how you can generate 55K. It's not simple. It's not as simple as saying, well, I want to make 55K in 90 days and not putting work behind it. In the last training I talked about, you also want to have at least anywhere from 60 to 90 days out, 120 days in some cases. It depends on the venue that you are actually hosting. And that, in fact, is key to understand now. Who will do what? Okay? And how will you do it? All right? Are you going to have a person stand up there? Are you going to have a person with live mic? Sort of like the old, for those of you that remember Donahue. Remember the show Donahue? Donahue was infamous for running through the audience with a microphone. Well, are you going to have a person who runs the mic, or will you have a standalone mic, like in some places that stand in the middle of the aisle, and people share their questions, their thoughts, their ideas? So you want to think about how you're going to handle questions. Matter of fact, how are you going to handle trolls? How are you going to have people that come in to try to disrupt the presentation? It never fails. Even on social media, there's always trolls. There's always going to be someone who is negative. You're trying to do something positive, and someone has nothing else better to do than to throw stones, than to disrupt what you're doing. You want to make sure you have systems in place to do that. Sometimes it's best to ignore that individual, sometimes addressing it. Okay, it just depends again on the venue that you're dealing with. And I'm probably going to do a training on how to deal with disruptors, because I've never met a presenter or a trainer that did not, in their experience, have at least once or twice someone try to disrupt a presentation, or a troll, someone throwing out comments, negative comments, especially on social media. It's a shame. You're trying to put out something positive and people have nothing else better to do. Not all of them, but there are a few, we all know who they are, that will get on and try to disrupt. And how do you deal with that? Now, the last thing I want to talk about is, where will you do it? Where will you have your event? Will you have a run through? I believe that if you're going to do a live event, you need to have at least 3 run throughs. This is where you actually go through the entire event at least 3 times. And the reason that you want to do it at least 3 times is that you want to get as close to what it's going to feel like. I would even have some people in the audience representing your audience, that they're there, and you want to do a rehearsal, at least 3 rehearsals. Can you imagine putting on a play and not having a rehearsal? It would be unheard of. And so why do you put on events and not rehearse, not have a rehearsal, not have a run through at least 3 times? The first time you will find everything will appear to be horrible. I remember putting on an event when I was doing credit repair years ago. And I did a run through, and it seemed like everything that could have gone bad went bad. But listen, I would rather have that happen during the rehearsal and be able to fix it than to have a live event and not have rehearsed and then have things not in place that should be in place. You want to make sure that if you have an event, you want to have multiple microphones. You want to have multiple sets of batteries, because trust me, it's almost what they call Murphy's Law, is having a convention the same time you're having your event. Things will go wrong, and you want to be able to prepare when things actually go wrong. Start thinking about those scenarios. What if this happened, then what? That's a great game for you to play. And part of your rehearsal, dedicate one of your rehearsals to what if, then what? In other words, you throw everything in there that could go wrong. And you want to make sure that people know how to respond, how to adapt, and how to keep moving forward. The reason I was able to generate $55K in 90 days doing live events, ladies and gentlemen, was because I put these simple strategies into play.